It is 4:03 in the morning. I'm Erin.
I'm Mike.
I'm Kyle.
And tonight on the Sleepy Nerds podcast, Mike makes love on top of a penny farthing.
Oh, jeez.
1, 2, 3. Listen.
Welcome back, four listeners. Tonight we are talking about sequels.
Yeah.
We're having no banter. We're getting right into it because we have a lot of unpopular opinions to share.
That is true. I made a promise to not talk about Peter Graves on this podcast tonight.
You're going to immediately break it.
And I immediately broke it. I don't apologize. So, guys, what do you think makes or breaks a sequel? We're going to be talking about good sequels and bad sequels tonight.
I'm going to lie down on the table for a while.
Okay. Mike, what do you think makes a good sequel?
I mean, critical reception, fan reception. I wouldn't base it too much off of monetary gain, just because, like, sequels most of the time make more than the original because there's that build-up and hype for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something just to be said for enjoyability that, you know, even if it's sort of a wacky film franchise, even if it's not a good movie, if it's just fun, you know, you can still be like, that was a good sequel. Like, I wasn't, you know, deeply moved by it, but I enjoyed it.
I feel like a sequel has to do what the first one did right again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It can't fuck up the basic premise. Mm-hmm. It has to build upon the mythology and the characters that have already been established. Mm-hmm. And I also think while it should go bigger, it can't go so out of the lines of the universe of the movie that nothing else could ever come after it, or that it ruins like the conceit of the first film. Mm-hmm. And I think, Erin, the first one you wanted to bring up,
right, was the Paranormal Activity movies, which I think the first three and maybe four I like, my memory gets a little sketchy on, but they were good, but it's just gotten, it has an escalation problem where it kept doing the same thing. And it kept going a little bigger, even if chronologically the timeline didn't totally make sense within the universe of the movies. Mm-hmm. But then it just got so big, it like kept doing bigger things until it made stuff. They put things into the movies that no longer made any sense or were just too ridiculous.
I think like Marked Ones introduces time travel to the franchise, and then Ghost Dimension. I think takes place...
Marked One's also like the kid gets like superpowers for no reason.
Yeah.
What?
He gets like demon superpowers.
And then, Ghost Dimension introduces really just nonsense. I mean, they wanted a gimmick film, so there's a camera that could actually record the physical shape of the ghost. Mm. And I mean, one thing I think like horror movies, you know, it's better to imagine the scary thing than actually see it. Mm-hmm. And really, in Ghost Dimension, they're really shoving that ghost in your face. Yeah. And it's not scary at all, and it just goes so out of the bounds of what the first film established.
Yeah. And even the first film sort of did that wrong. Like they changed the ending. Their original ending wasn't going to show the thing, and they changed it to end with like literally the monster like screaming in your face, possessing the
Katie, whatever it is. Yeah.
So it really is just like that set a precedent of them not totally making good choices.
Yeah.
And but sort of going back to what I said of just like being fun, I think the horror franchises that do get it right are the ones that do that. Like, you will be able to say more about this, Kyle, than I can, but like the Evil Dead movies or like the Jason, movies.
Horror, it's my favorite genre film, and it's weird with horror movies because I'd say like Friday the 13th is my favorite slasher franchise. Mm-hmm. And I'd make an argument that sequels have to do the same thing and just do better every time. Friday the 13th just does the same thing every time, except, when it's, Jason goes to hell, and then he's not even Jason in the entire movie. He's just, possessed random people, and you don't see Jason except for, the beginning and the end. Mm-hmm. And Jason X, where he's in space.
Sure.
But
which one is he on a boat?
That's Jason Takes Manhattan for 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Jason Takes Boat is really good. But no, I feel like with slasher films especially, I would liken it to having a favorite meal at a restaurant that you go back just for that meal.
Yeah.
Every time you go back, you just want it to be the same. You always want it to taste the same because that's your comfort meal. When you go back and let's say it's like oh, I love like the chicken and waffles at this restaurant's great. And then you come back one day and they're like, oh yeah, now we're using like wheat waffles and there's like peas on the plate. It's like, I don't want that. I want chicken and waffles because I know what chicken and waffles is. That's all I want.
Yeah. But I mean, that like going with that analogy, that's why it can be so hit and miss too. Is just like you could sit down and be like, oh my god, I love peas. Like this is making it even better. Or you could like sit down and be like, oh, chicken and waffles, and now there's like a crazy caramel sauce, and you could either be like, oh, that sounds great, or it's like, okay, that's like too much. You need to stop.
Yeah.
And it can be very it can be like universally like everyone hates peas, or it can be like, oh, some people like this and some people didn't. It just didn't work.
Horror movies are just weird that way. I would argue that sequels, if a sequel does the same thing over and over again, it's not great. Like the Hangover movies.
Ugh. Yeah.
It's just the same shit all 3 movies, and it sucks.
Right.
Well, I mean, I'm not a fan of
Yeah,
the
I don't
Hangover.
like any of them. So.
Or not really comedies in general. I'm not a big current comedies. I'm not a big
I
fan
hate
of.
funny.
Yeah. I hate joy.
I
don't like the Hangover.
I really
movies,
hate humor, and I think it's apparent on the podcast. But no, like horror movies, I like if it's the same thing over and over again, like the Friday the 13th films. But then movies that do that too, like the Conjuring movies. It's both movies are people in a house get haunted. You know, the Warrens go to investigate. And the second Conjuring film was it was the same thing, but then it did what I said with Paranormal Activity. It just added too much to it. And it's like, yeah, even though it's the same and they're trying to do different things, I don't care for this anymore. It's like, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Was The Conjuring the one with the Darth Maul looking thing?
No,
Or is
that
that
was
Insidious?
Insidious.
I haven't
yeah.
seen any of them, so
That
I
was
can't really...
another friend. God, we can.
I was gonna say Insidious 2, I feel like was the same thing where it was just like, well, actually, I feel like that does more of a thing that I was going to say, which is something I really hate in sequels, which I feel like you see more in dramas than horror films. But when the entire sort of climax and entire point of the first film is to establish something, to some kind of character growth or some kind of big point, and then that's like immediately undone in the sequel. Like, I feel like Insidious did that, but it's been a while since I saw the second one. Where it was
Patrick Wilson like going into the spirit world.
And this isn't a movie, but I'm a musical person, so like Phantom of the Opera. Andrew Lloyd Webber wrote a sequel based on like a terrible
Love Never
book.
Dies.
Yeah, like that's awful because it's like the entire point of the first one is like Christine is in love with Raoul and she makes this great noble sacrifice, and that's literally the entire point of the moment is they get to like go off and be in love together, and she was willing to sacrifice that even though the Phantom is a murderer, objectively better than Raoul, but a murderer. And then in the second one, it's like, oh yeah, also like she didn't really love Raoul and he's become like a drunk gambling addict and she secretly had a kid with the Phantom, and like also they moved to America for some reason and the Phantom is like running a showgirl like review. It's just awful. It's just like everything.
The true monster is Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Love Never Dies sounds
you're
like a
not
James
wrong.
Bond title.
Yeah, it kind of does. It's just like it really, and I feel like sequels have a problem with that a lot. And like what were we talking about? The Fast and the Furious franchise, like those kind of movies where at the end they're like, okay, or like Ocean's 11, the Ocean's movie. They're like, this is the last big one, and we're gonna give it all we got, and then we're never gonna do it again.
Yeah.
But then they get okayed for a sequel.
Fast and
like,
Furious,
well,
they
okay, I
just
guess
keep
we're gonna
doing
do
it.
again.
Luckily, Ocean 11 stopped after 3.
Yeah, well now they're doing the prequel with all women. So
Yeah.
who the
I feel like the problem with like long-lasting sequels is not like it's almost not like a thing of like being worse than the ones before or even being like being better. I feel like the worst sequels are sequels that just like go in a series of lateral moves, like the Saw franchise.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like the sequel episodes, we have a lot of horror movies. 'Cause I feel like more than anything, like horror franchises for the most part were known to have big 12 sequels.
Yeah.
And I think now that's like branching off into other movies, like the Fast and Furious films, and now everything's just trying to be like 45 sequels in a row. But like the Saw movies are again the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
But I just think it doesn't work because of like that food analogy. It's almost every movie they tried to add something new to it, like some gimmick Or they're like,
Yeah.
oh, really? There's like 4 jigsaws, and
Yeah.
oh, one of the jigsaws.
The plate gets overloaded at some point.
Yeah, it's like, oh, one of the jigsaws is like a monkey in a coat. Like,
One of them's
They're
in
all
space.
they're all competing with each other to be the real
yeah,
jigsaw.
it's just like after all, it's just like, well, who gives a shit? Like, you know, it's gonna be okay. So a bunch of people get torn up, and then someone else's jigsaw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like trying to walk that line between like we're trying to make a quote unquote serious sequel or like we are just trying to have like a wacky franchise and have fun. And if you're sort of trying to have it both ways of like, oh, now there's like 18 jigsaws, it's like, no, stop explaining it. Either just be like we want to maim people in crazy ways or like have an actual plot and put some thought into it.
Yeah, maybe don't kill your antagonist in the 3rd film. Maybe.
and then make 5 other films.
And then
Yeah.
make more films. And then a new movie coming out this year.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, it's after they titled the last one the final chapter.
To slightly segue, do you think that there are some? Well, I know that there are, but what do you think are some sequels that were terrible, but you can see the idea behind them was good? For example, my first one is The Thing, the 20 or whatever
yeah.
thing, where it was telling about the like Norwegian station and everything.
Yeah,
and you're like,
the
that'll-
pre-make. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, that's great, but then like half the things they just like change to sort of not make sense with the first one, and like after screenings, and like just a lot of the stuff they didn't like do a lot of research, so it didn't make sense.
That
and-
movie, it felt like in the final 10 minutes they remembered that they were a prequel and had to line up with the first film
Yeah.
because they're like, guy slits his wrist, axe in the door, this and that.
Yeah,
That's like-
but they cut out the guy slitting his wrist and just had the thing come in and slam him against a wall. There is a deleted scene where it actually has him like the thing banging at the door and he slits his wrist and dies there, and then it has like the actual scene that's in the final cut of the movie is not that. I wrote a paper on The Thing.
Maybe I stopped watching that movie and just watched all the deleted scenes to see what happened.
It's very possible.
Well, that's like Prometheus had that problem.
Yeah.
Like Prometheus was doing their own thing, and then in like the last 10, 15 minutes realized like, oh shit, we have to line this up with Alien somehow.
Yeah,
That's
like,
a-
oh yeah, we're an alien movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good example of like a movie. I like the idea behind it. I like the ideas of movies taking place in of an established universe, but just telling you something else going on in that universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt like Prometheus just should have cut out like all of the alien references
Yeah.
because after a while that just made no sense.
Yeah.
Like, if the aliens were, I haven't seen Covenant, but I've heard a lot of shitty things
neither.
about it. But the Covenant, they show you like that's where like the xenomorphs kind of come into being.
Yeah.
But then why in Prometheus is there a mural on a wall of a xenomorph? If they didn't exist yet.
Because Kyle.
Well, because like, weren't they supposed to have like in Prometheus some like, didn't I think the Queen still existed, and they had like some precursors to the xenomorphs, right?
I
I don't know. I could be totally wrong on this.
There is like the like fucking alpha, like or like version 00.1 xenomorph at the very end of the film, but that's the
Yeah.
only thing. If there's anything else, it has to be like an expanded universe deal that I just haven't read.
I don't know.
Because they don't reference anything else in that film.
Yeah,
so.
it's so bizarre.
We're venturing into prequels.
Yeah, let's get back
Well,
to
yeah.
let's
That's
get back to
where my heart
sequels.
really lies with prequels.
So, when I came up with the idea for the sequel one, I had a couple ideas like sequels or movies that thought they were getting sequels but ended up not getting them. So
that is the most frustrating thing to me.
yeah,
Is when they leave with like an ending that's setting up a sequel or that's like an ambiguous, the end question mark.
Yeah.
And then it just never happens.
So for me, it was, and we've talked about this before, was Green Lantern. Like they had that sequence or that shot at the end where Sinestro's putting on the yellow ring of fear. Like they were setting up the next movie for Sinestro to be the bad guy. Nothing.
Yeah, I stopped watching that one.
Yeah.
Continuity. But
But I mean, like there's a lot of movies out there that are like that where they build up in the first movie expecting it to be a huge success and get a sequel, and then it just never happens.
Ghostbusters 2016.
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah, that's it up. Then the credits is where they're like listening to the radio and they're like, oh, who's Zool?
Oh, really?
I don't know if I
didn't
stayed
even
for
remember
the-
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember that scene, but
Did they say who's Zool or who's Gozer? They might say who's Gozer.
I think it was Maybe it was. I don't know.
Yeah, they'll never fucking make a sequel to that movie. That
And
won't happen.
Another one was The Last Airbender, the M. Night
Oh.
Shyamalan's attempt at the Avatar cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
Like that whole that movie was supposed to have sequels. It was supposed
Yeah.
to be several long to cover the whole thing
Or
of
or like the his Dark Materials. What was the Golden Compass? It was like
I was like in like the young
based on
adult
a book
novel
series
boom
and-
where just like
right. I
yeah.
think it was like on the front edge of the boom though. It was like before they got really popular. But it was like, oh yeah, we're gonna make like this into
Yeah.
a series. They made the first one, just never did anything else. And like Narnia to some extent too. They like had a more slow and sputtering death, but it was
'cause
like
they at least had 3, but it died after the
yeah,
third
but
one.
I feel like they got like spaced out more and more too. It was like, okay, first one, and then like sequel, and like
couple
after
years
a
later,
while,
yeah.
third one.
It was a
and-
very weird release schedule.
Stop
Another
looking up the graves on your phone.
I'm looking up sequels.
another idea I was thinking of was movies that got sequels that shouldn't have. For me, I feel like The Matrix would have been fine without sequels. Like,
Yeah.
because there was a gap, right, between
Oh, yeah.
The Matrix and, was it Reloaded?
Was it? I think 99 to 2002.
Was it?
Maybe?
I feel like it might have been longer.
It was definitely
but-
like standalone movie, and then like a long period, and then like, okay, we're gonna make 2 sequels.
Well,
Yeah.
didn't they also have in between that? They had, I think, Animatrix was in between that. I think the Matrix video game that was in canon was in between that.
Yeah, but
Yes.
I feel like those. wow.
No, I feel like the video game came out after Reloaded because the video game focused
Possibly.
on Jada Pinkett Smith's character, and we didn't see her until after.
Possibly.
But
I don't remember.
But yeah,
But-
it didn't.
I mean,
Those movies don't need sequels because Neo becomes God at the end of the first movie.
pretty much.
Like, I mean, and then
that's sort of what I was talking about earlier. I feel like it's something that they made the entire first movie to establish Neo is basically God. He's the one and everything. And then they're like, oh, well, we want to make 2 sequels, so let's like kind of undo that. And it makes it like if you go back watching the first one, having seen the other 2, you're like, yeah, but this isn't really as impactful when you know that like,
Yeah.
oh, this isn't going to really mean what they say it means here. Does that make sense?
no, I get that.
I feel like that's the problem with all sequels, though. Like, if they reveal something in a later movie, going back to the original just kind of it changes the whole effect.
Yeah, well,
Like-
unless it is planned and then the sequels actually get made. And
Well,
they
right,
make
but like I'm
sense.
saying, like, if spoiler alert, if you watch Empire Strikes Back and find out that Vader is Luke's father, and then you go back and watch A New Hope, you're kind of like, oh, like like this, like
Yeah, I feel like that sort of adds to the tension.
it just gives it a different feel. And
Well, sure it does, but it doesn't like ruin it. You aren't just like, oh well, like this makes no sense
I'm not
if he's
saying
his father.
No, I'm not saying it ruins it. Like in some cases, yeah, like where there are some cases where things revealed in sequels will ruin the original, but like even with good sequels and good originals, when they reveal something, it's got a different feel and
Yeah.
to it.
Right. I think it's just whether that's again, it's sort of like if it's done with planning or not.
Yeah.
Like if you do it in a way that's like, oh well, that was foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Or if you just do it in a way that's like, we're deciding to retcon that.
Yeah.
So this seems like a good place to go into sequels that we actually liked or that we think surpassed the original.
I think that would be easier to do.
Do you?
'Cause, yeah, I have like a few in mind. Like,
Well, like I have one in mind, but I need you to talk about it.
Okay.
Mad Max.
okay,
I saw only Road Warrior and I hated it and I never saw any of the sequels. I know you like Road Warrior more, but I was just like, it's garbage. And everyone was like, oh yeah, well like Mad Max is totally different and it's like a better film other than you.
Road Warrior. I mean, this is when like I like all the Mad Max movies, but I think Road Warrior is like one of the best examples of escalating a sequel not so far above where it can't get ridiculous, like like Thunderdome does, but I think it takes everything good from the first film. Like Mel Gibson had a very good performance in Mad Max. I think he has a better performance in Road Warriors. It's kind of this like grizzled like desert or wasteland survivor. And it added all the cool stuff that you want, like your post-apocalyptic films had like the gimps and bondage gear and like
Yeah, see, it was just like watching Road Warrior in probably 2013. I watched it, 2012. Like I was expecting that, and then I watched Road Warrior, and I was like, "Where's like any of the cool stuff?"
yeah. I think going from that conceit of having like a small idea and escalated it to just a good enough of a point without going crazy is like Night of the Living Dead to the Dawn of the Dead. Which I think Night of the Living Dead is probably the more important film, just for establishing like, the modern zombie and everything.
All right.
And arguably it's like social messages. And then Dawn of the Dead, which took that idea and I think just made it a lot better. I mean, I think the characterization was better, the social commentary was better. I think it didn't go too crazy. It's, a super long movie compared to Night of the Living Dead, but it didn't go like too off the rails. I like that. It did all the things that you would want to see done better in the zombie film. It had like the better like gore effects. It had crazy shit going on that wasn't like too crazy, I want to say. I don't know.
How crazy is crazy enough without being too crazy, Kyle?
Crazy to crazy enough to too crazy is like Blade to Blade 2 to Blade 3. But it's like my other point. I think like we're gonna bounce all over the fucking place in this
Yeah, we
episode.
are.
Yeah.
Because I have a list of like 40 movies.
It's fine.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I have a list of like 20 movies and I don't want to talk about any of them, so.
We picked a good topic for an episode.
Uh-huh. Well, like, I also feel like my contribution to most of the things we're bringing up is like, I never saw that one.
Yeah.
What if this is the episode where people start listening?
Yeah?
Yeah.
We're
I
boned.
hope not. Well, what is this, 5, 6?
This is 5.
I'm sorry, listeners.
No, this
Is this
5,
getting cut? I'm
4?
sorry, listeners who aren't going to hear this.
Yeah. Sorry, Nicole.
Potentially.
Hello?
Hey, Vanessa. She's going to have the worst time editing this episode.
Yeah, we really are. This isn't even the latest one we've done, but we're really all over the place. All right. What else do I want to talk about? Spider-Man 2, I say surpassed the original.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, good talk. Good to guys.
No, I mean,
I feel like that's a good example of, I feel like that's a fairly well-established pattern of like, original is okay, sequel is better, third just goes all to
Murked
hell.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, again...
Like X-Men is also like that too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
X-Men
X2.
1, okay, X2, great, X-Men Last Stand, awful.
What's so about sequels? It's like, those two examples did everything the first movie did right.
Yep.
They took all the established characters, fleshed them out, made them better, and they did they introduced like a bigger villain, but without going too insane.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's what happens with like, the third film in those franchises.
They went too big.
They went too big. Like,
Yeah.
you went
Let's
from...
have like 18 villains.
Yeah, in Spider-Man 3 and in X-Men 3, it went from, hey, just like Doc Ock, but hey, now we have to have like Neo Goblin like floating around and Sandman and Venom.
ugh.
And then X-Men 3, it's like, yeah, but can we have like Juggernaut and Phoenix and Magneto
Yeah.
and all this crazy shit? And like the mutant cure in that film too, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Angel showed up for 2 seconds.
Yeah. That was
Beast
so
showed up,
fucking
yeah.
weird.
Kelsey Grammer was in it.
Yeah.
was in
As
all of them.
Beast.
No,
No, he wasn't.
Kelsey Grammer's not in all the movies.
I thought he was Beast
No.
on all of them.
No,
Yeah.
just Last Stand. It was such a
Really?
bizarre one, yeah.
It's been a long time since I've seen any of those movies, I guess.
I think he's, like, Hank McCoy is referenced and shown in the first movie as still being human.
Okay.
He's on TV talking. He's, like, talking to, like, the Senate.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
And then he shows up for the first time in X3.
yeah.
And then he shows up again in Days of Future Past at
Yeah.
the very
And
end.
well, Kelsey Grammer.
Yeah.
And then
Kelsey.
young Hank McCoy's and like all the
Yeah.
the
First
prequel
class.
remake,
Yeah.
things. I have not seen. I feel like I've seen the original X-Men fairly recently, but like X2 and like Last Stand, I probably haven't seen since I saw it in theaters. But like, I really thought he was on all of them.
No, just the third.
Hmm.
And yeah.
I just remember All of Life with like a hazy, rosy Kelsey Grammer filter over it. So I just like always think he's there.
That's a horrible life to live.
Oh, I like Kelsey
My-
Grammer.
My biggest problem to this day with the Spider-Man movies, and until the most recent one, is the fact that they have Peter taking his mask off all the fucking time.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he could be in costume fighting like a bad guy, and he'll pull off his mask to make a facial expression.
Did we talk about this on a podcast?
We did.
Was it
You
on a
did?
podcast? Or?
Yeah, there's a whole, like,
I was gonna say,
5-minute
I'm going to go on the rant again about like superheroes taking off their masks and TV
I know, I
shows and
listened
movies.
to it today, as a matter of
Oh,
fact.
Oh,
okay.
was it? I haven't finished
All right,
it.
I
so
was
no
going to
one
watch
will-
all the Spider-Man movies and do the ratio
Oh,
of, like,
yeah.
masked to
Yeah.
unmasked.
How's that going, Kyle?
I'm 13% done.
It's been like 3 weeks in our time, and it's been like 8 weeks in podcast release time.
I watched all the trailers on YouTube. That's as far as I got.
I mean, the
I
trailers
both
probably
expected this, and I'm still disappointed in you.
the trailers probably have most of the scenes anyway in costume, so it doesn't matter.
Are there any third films in a franchise that surpass the second film?
That surpassed the second?
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah. Crocodile Dundee 3?
would get out. I would say
The horrible thing is I can't tell if you're being serious.
I would say Revenge of the Sith was the best out of the prequel movies.
Oh, you know
so,
what?
I mean, it's not setting a high bar,
Yeah,
but
I
it does
agree with
surpass
that.
the second
Attack of the
one.
Clones is so shitty. Though,
I think,
Yeah.
you have to see that as sort of a, like, its own...
Trilogy.
Well, yeah, its own trilogy and its own contained thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like technically that's the 6th movie, so you're saying the 6th movie is better than the 5th, but I want to talk about Star Wars because I want to talk about unpopular sequel opinions that we have. Like, are there sequels that you think are better that like aren't popularly believed so? Because Kyle's gonna punch me in the face, but I like Return better than Empire Strikes Back.
I'm going to punch you in the face, too.
God damn it. I'm gonna hide behind the table,
Yeah,
folks.
that's indefensible.
How dare you? That's like a crime. It's not better than Empire. I don't know what you're smoking.
There's
I don't know.
there's cool parts to it. Like all
Yeah.
the Jabba stuff's cool, but like
I love the space battle around the second Death Star, but
yeah. But then like all the Endor shit, like I don't care
Yeah.
about it. And like C-3PO being a god to the Ewoks, I don't give a shit about.
it
Next
was
Next, you're gonna
cool.
tell me that you didn't like the addition of Ewoks blinking with a sound effect into the
Ugh.
remastered versions.
It was cool to see that battle on Endor's surface when they were trying to get into the shield generator, but like other than that, nothing about the Endor stuff was cool.
And like I think
I just enjoyed it more.
Return pisses me off the most because it's the moment that I realized like Boba Fett was cool, but he also didn't do anything.
Yeah, he died
Yeah.
after 5
Like in
minutes.
Empire, he looks awesome.
Yeah.
And you're like, he's fucking cool looking. I want that action figure. I want like a tattoo on my chest of him. My first child's gonna be named Boba Fett.
Do you have a
And then-
tattoo on the
and
chest of
dead.
Boba Fett?
No,
And then he
Can't
died.
tell if you're being
it's
serious
Jar
or
Jar
not
Binks.
now.
No, but then like Return, it's like so like Boba Fett showed up just long enough to die comically.
Yeah,
Supposedly.
I like
Supposedly died comically.
allegedly.
I
Well,
like it.
we'll get into the E.
I don't like
Yeah.
Boba Fett dying, but I like Return.
That's a whole Star Wars episode. Folks.
Okay,
we'll
so
get to that
do
later
you
on.
guys have other ones? I feel like there was another one that I had in mind for myself, but I can't remember it right now. But other like sequels that you're like, yeah, I think that was like better than the original, or like third one better than the second one. But like most people are like, oh no, that one's awful.
Return of the King for me. I liked
Yeah.
best out of the 3 Lord of the Rings films, just because. Like I love seeing the battles, like in movies. Like I love the space battles in Star Wars. I love the ground battles, and for me, Return of the King had the most action in it.
Yeah,
Like you just had all the battles in it, so like that's what I liked the most.
that's fair.
But it rounded everything out. I mean, granted, it ended like 10 different times, but that's another story.
That's a Peter
That's
Jackson
true.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in terms of like sequels that I guess weren't as popular, like
Gremlins too.
Erin, are you
I
trying
feel like
to get her
going back.
tonight?
Yeah.
I already mentioned it
No.
once, and I feel I'm gonna keep contradicting myself when it comes to these movies. But
Sure.
Isn't that what we always do?
yeah, Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. What? There's new
Is
blood
that
in the film.
before or after Space?
Before Space.
Okay.
It is commonly referred to as Jason versus Carrie,
Okay.
where they introduce a telekinetic girl for like Jason to like fight against. And again, this is like a peas on the plate type deal, I guess. But this is a case where like I really liked it. It's
Yeah.
I don't think it's really popular like in the
Yeah.
Friday franchise, but it was cool to finally see Jason like have someone to fight against,
Like an actual.
like
adversary.
an actual threat to him.
Right. So
And,
other
like,
than
you
just
got,
like
you got to see
people
Jason
running
to like
straight.
get like fucking like a building dropped on him, like not an entire building, but
So-
like parts of the building dropped on, like his mask cracked open and shit thrown into his body. Like
Was he the good guy in that film then? And
no,
the
he
girl
was
was the
not.
bad guy?
No, she was still the good guy.
Okay.
But I know, like I really liked that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, until like Jason versus Freddy, where they actually gave him, you know, another slasher to go against, and
I think that was the first rated R movie I saw in
Was
theaters.
it?
I think so.
I I remember liking that movie, and then I watched it again. It ages.
Yeah, I'm
not-
sure it doesn't hold up.
Not great. Like, there's this weird, like, every time Jason hits someone, they, like, fly the fuck away on, like, a string. And it's really weird.
That sounds
Like,
great.
I think my favorite scene in any of the Friday the 13th movies is in Jason X and Space One. When he's on that, like, knockoff holodeck.
Oh, the cheerleaders?
And he's got the girls
and
in the sleeping bags, and he's, like,
yeah.
smacking them against
Yeah,
the
that's
trees.
great.
It's
Jason X
fucking
is great. That movie, Jason X has one of the best kills in the entire franchise.
Which
Where he freezes the
Oh,
girl's
yeah.
head in liquid nitrogen and smashes her face.
I was so
pretty good.
brutal, but
That's
it's so
That's a great
great.
kill. We're going off topic. So,
Are we? We're
Blade-
talking about sequels that we
Yeah.
enjoy.
Yeah. So, all right, since we're on topic of, like, sequels that have surpassed, and we're already talking about horror movies, I say Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
I love Evil Dead 1. Evil Dead 1 has such a great, like, grimy, low budget, dirty feel to it. And it's so weird. Like, God, watching it as a kid, like, I just had this feeling I was watching something I shouldn't have been watching.
As a kid, you shouldn't have. I saw that movie like 3 years ago.
I bought that movie on VHS when I was like 7,
Of course you
and I watched it maybe 100 times in a row.
Oh, Kyle.
Explains a lot.
Yep.
But Evil Dead 2, it expands on the original. Well, first off, it's like kind of a remake of the first one.
Okay.
Like, they kind of just redid the entire beginning, but got rid of all the friends. It was just Ash and his girlfriend. But it added everything that made the Evil Dead franchise great after that. It added, like, the dark comedy to it. It added, like, Bruce Campbell, if I was, like, giving Ash personalities. It's been, like, this blue collar, like, I might as well fight these evil things, like, Hellboy kind of attitude almost. Like, I loved it. It had, like, better kills, like, the blood, like, Ash versus his hand. Like, all the fucking laughing deer on the wall. So good. It was like Three Stooges. Three Stooges meets Evil Dead. It was like super fucking violent and hilarious, and I liked that about it. Like, all right, so sequels that surpass the original. What do you guys have?
I said mine.
I said Mad Max, Spider-Man, X-Men 2. I think in the original Star Trek movies, there was that thing where only the even ones were good. So I
Yeah.
think you could say that about many of, like, 2 and 4, both better than the first one.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
nuclear vessels better than anything in Star Trek the motion picture.
I'm biased. I'm not like a giant Star Trek fan, so it's hard for me to kind of like.
Well, I just listened to you talk about Evil Dead 2, which I've never seen, and Mad Max, which I've never seen, and, like, all this other bullshit. So you can listen to me talk about Star Trek for 5 goddamn minutes.
I wasn't cutting you off. I was allowing you to talk Star Trek. I was just letting them my opinion. But no, by all means, go ahead.
And the reboots, to circle back around to good idea, bad execution. The Star Trek reboots for me, every single one that's come out, I've watched it and not enjoyed it as I was watching it, and then later been like, oh yeah, that was a good movie. I like that movie. The first one, I was just so mad that they reset the universe and, like, overwrote every series that ever come out except for Enterprise, which is the only one that needs to be rewritten. Maybe not the only one, but the one that needs it most. And then, like, the second one, like, just, like, Khan was just weird and it was all over the place. And the third one just, I only watched it
The
recently.
third one was
but
not good.
I liked it better than the second, but it was like, it had
think
like a weird,
so
like,
bizarre.
fan fiction-y feel. Like, it felt like it was written by
It
fans.
was just all over the place.
And wasn't meant to be a Hollywood movie. Yeah.
I like that. Like, it's like, man, like, imagine a Star Trek reboot movie written by someone who's a fan of the original
Yeah.
Star Treks. Like,
But I mean, just in a
it-
non-professional way.
Yeah, I guess.
It reads like something that would be like someone's like, oh, you know what I'd love to see is like this happening.
it felt
like,
very small.
I want like Chekhov and Kirk to like have an adventure on a crazy planet and like go jumping around. Yeah.
But that feels like Star Trek to me. Like, that movie felt more like Star Trek to me than the other two. Like, the second one, definitely. The second one was, like,
Oh, yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
I mean,
And the second one made no sense. It's a perfect example of a sequel that, like, ruined everything else by getting too big. And at the end of Star Trek Into Darkness, they discover immortality, and they discover, like, the ability to, like, beam people from fucking anywhere.
Yeah.
So ships wouldn't even be necessary anymore.
Yeah.
And then in the third one, they don't even acknowledge that at all.
Yeah.
Which, good. I'm glad they didn't. Like,
I
and
mean,
even the first movie, it's like, I appreciated they, like, added some action to the Star Trek universe because, you know, Star Trek's not known to be action-packed.
right.
But it also didn't feel like Star Trek. It felt like,
Well, that's because they were like, let's fundamentally change all of these characters you know and love. You know,
Well-
the characters you know have known and loved since the 60s. Well, like, Kirk's a piece of shit who's always getting into trouble.
Well, that's-
Spock's in love with Uhura, and also his planet dies for no reason. Like,
I'm not the biggest Star Trek fan either, but when those movies came out, I read up a little bit on the original stuff, and I don't know. In my opinion, it just made sense for them to kind of go that route, like because if you do, no matter what they did, like if they said, "Oh yeah, we're going to do a reboot," and if they had tried to make it accurate to the original one, they would have pissed a lot of people off.
sure, well,
I
and
mean, they
don't
pissed
think
off a
you
lot
can-
of people doing it the way they did, but it gave
Yeah.
them a chance to start fresh.
Right. And well, I think
Kind
my
of.
opinion on the first one now is like, it's fun and like I'm annoyed that it happened, but also like it is an enjoyable film
Yeah.
that I can sort of get behind. And that's like kind of how I feel about the third one too.
Well, they also
But
said
I
they're
am just
gonna-
like in my heart still like, why did you have to? It's sort of like the Star Wars just
yeah.
saying their expanded universe is like, yeah, no, none of that exists anymore. It's like,
didn't
well,
they-
I like that was a big part of like my life,
Yeah.
and you're saying it doesn't matter.
Didn't they also say they were going to retcon that with the fourth one coming out? Didn't they say they were going to somehow make it so that the Enterprise goes back in time and ends up saving Kirk's father from being killed? I thought I read that somewhere.
I don't know.
By the Romulans.
I've
Do you think
been.
they're gonna make a fourth one?
I mean,
I doubt it.
probably, right? I
I
mean,
doubt it.
I thought they said they weren't. I thought you were talking about them like TV.
no, I thought that J.J. Abrams is going to do it again.
I don't know.
I could have swore I heard that.
In recent years, I have like sort of taken up a vow of like watching as few trailers and reading as little as possible about like upcoming projects like TV and movies, because they just like always ruin it for me.
Yeah.
Just watch a trailer where like everything is given away in the movie, or just like read all these like behind the scenes things and like go into it with like all this knowledge that isn't really used in
Yeah.
the property itself. And so I just like, I don't have an answer for you, is what I'm saying.
Unless you have something to add, I was gonna continue with the sequels. I like
Sure.
better.
Go for it.
I think a big one. I'm gonna get some James Cameron territory here before I trash him in a few minutes.
Titanic 2.
Yeah, Titanic 2.
The Titanic King?
Piranha 2, The Spawning. I'd say like Terminator 2.
Yeah.
I love Terminator. I love the whole like tech noir thing it goes for, but Terminator 2 just like escalated it. So like by like adding depth to like Sarah Connor, she became like this fucking badass
Yeah.
character, and even like the Terminator, like even changing the dynamic between them.
Yeah.
I think was something really cool to take from the first film. And
Yeah, I feel like that is like a great example of like how to make a good sequel, is like it kept the things from the original but
Totally
deepened them
flips it.
and flipped them on their head. That
Yeah.
was just like, okay, well like Arnie's a good guy now, and like also like Sarah Connor, the like meek girl from the first one, she's like totally kick ass, and
Yeah.
then like in this future technology now there's metal, like liquid metal
2000,
Terminator 2.
And I think
Phase
it's
3 thing.
I think it's a great example of like even what we said with like X2 and Spider-Man 2, which like it introduces like a bigger, badder threat, but not like some crazy like insurmountable. I mean, I know there's Judgment Day and everything.
something that's-
The end of the world is literally like the bad guy,
But like with the actual physical enemy, you see like they upgrade it, but they don't like completely go batshit.
Yeah.
Like not like in the third Terminator movie where like the villain
where everything's a Terminator.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
like no
Yeah.
like the actual like the chick Terminator has like this unlimited arsenal within her body.
Mike, be respectful. She has a name, and I don't know what it is.
Wasn't she like this,
Christina Loke? It's
Wasn't she
something
like the-
Swedish.
isn't she like
I
the
was thinking of-
T2000 or some shit like that? I
Who
don't
gives a
know.
fuck?
But that's the thing. Like that's an example
I
of
was
them.
going to say that I felt like you were like calling Mike sexist without warrant, but now I think you're both sexist. Yeah, hey, she has a name, and her
Hey.
name is Sugar Tits.
Anyway,
You know the worst part of the Terminator 3 is where she's driving a car and she gets stopped by a police officer, and she looks at a billboard of like a woman with like her like cleavage hanging out,
And
and
her-
then her like boobs get bigger
yeah,
before the cop gets there.
Oh, I forgot about that.
yeah. It's just
Do you
ridiculous.
think that that's like a really complex statement on advertising and how it
No.
objectifies women?
That movie also has a really weird like. Out of all the Hollywood movies I've seen, it has a really crazy blooper they left in the film. They cast Nick Stahl.
Kyle.
Anyway.
He's fucking horrible in that movie. The only thing I think that movie does well is the very end, where they kind of reveal like, oh, Judgment Day was never going to be stopped. It just has to
Yeah, it's
happen,
gonna
and they like
happen
lock him
regardless.
away. And I like kind of the end of the movie with like the nukes flying all over the place.
That was pretty cool. But
I
that's
like that
about
bit.
it.
Everything else is just such a shit show. It's a
Yeah.
perfect example of like a third film that went crazy.
Yeah. So you were gonna say you were gonna shit on James Cameron.
Yeah, because going way back to the first half of the episode, sequels that don't need to be made is like Avatar.
I was waiting
Yep.
for somebody to get to that.
I don't get why we're getting 4. First of all, I don't believe they're gonna happen.
Yeah, no, it's just been pushed off so much
Even
at
if
this
trailers
point.
come out, I still don't believe they're a thing.
I mean, the first one just ended in such a great way. Like, you didn't, I mean, yeah, it left you with that, and it wasn't even a cliffhanger, though.
I don't-
But, like, it ended in a way, but, like, it ended in a way that kind of felt good. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think-
I do feel like it's going to have that thing where it is like, well, what's the problem in the next one going to be? It's going to undo something from the first one, or it's going to be something
Stephen
that's...
Lane's the bad guy in the next 4 movies.
Again,
Yeah.
like, but he's
dead.
I don't
But
get
whatever.
it.
They've already shown, that they could bring people back in that franchise. Like,
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
but, like-
yeah, and well, I think that leads into the bigger problem, which is just like, who cares about that universe? I know a lot of people do. They just opened the thing at Animal Kingdom and Disney World of like
I mean-
the Avatar Land, and a bunch of people flocked to it. But
but
just
was that
like,
because it was Avatar or because it was something new?
It's new.
probably
It's
both.
new.
But
Yeah.
it's a cool universe, and it would be cool to see like other parts of that universe. But you don't have to go back to the same place.
To me, like I never liked Avatar. I
Me
wasn't
neither.
impressed with like the technology.
Yeah.
I wasn't impressed with the story. It's just a rehash. It's Dances with Wolves
and
Yeah.
Pocahontas.
and like
Yeah, and a
Ferngully
million other
even.
things. Yeah.
But like it is, like the visuals are pretty cool. Like the digital, I think it's
It's fine. I mean, I'll give you that. Like visually, the world is interesting.
Yeah.
But I just don't care about the mythology. I don't like nothing. I can't think of anything that they could expand upon that'd make me like it.
Yeah.
And I just think there's so many like fundamentally like wrong, weird things about the film, and it was just another like white savior narrative.
You don't like
And-
the unobtainium?
Did I not like Giovanni Ribisi as a literally mustache twirling bad guy that was like playing office putt while like a tree was being destroyed? No, Mike, I didn't like that. Fucking.
I think that our problem with Avatar and sequels is kind of like our problem with The Hangover and sequels, is that like if you think the first one's terrible, it's hard to be like, oh boy, a sequel's coming
Yeah.
out. And like even if the sequel would be like, oh, it's way better than the original, you're like, yeah, but I don't care. When you're in the midst of that, waiting for a sequel to come out, you're not going to be like, oh, well, I'll give the sequel a chance because I hated the original.
Yeah.
Like, why would you?
And you know what? I wish an Avatar sequel would be really cool, and I hope it is. Like, I want like new exciting sci-fi properties, and if they manage to do something good with Avatar, 4 more sequels, and even that to me, like just announcing the fact that there's 4 more sequels
That's
to it
a lot. That's
makes
like,
me believe that they're just biting off way more than they could chew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
what's
overkill.
the story going to be to like?
The humans come back and try to get the unobtainium
Like
again.
all I can think of is like they're like, oh, now we're gonna go to like the water part of Pandora. Now we're gonna go to the desert part of Pandora. And
But
it's
we
just
saw
like,
those already.
Yeah, but like, there's because I fucking James Cameron was saying he was like filming in like the Mariana Trench, and he's like, yeah, we're gonna use footage from there for the movie.
Why?
Why?
Just every time we cut to black.
And then like, I read an article that was like he was using footage from like the Mars rover, and I'm like, oh, what a crazy Onion article. And it wasn't.
It wasn't.
I'm like, I don't know. He's just James Cameron. Just release True Lies on Blu-ray and stop.
Or
what
just
you're
keep
doing.
going with like original properties and taking your time with them. You
Yeah,
know?
like-
you seem to do well when you do that.
His next thing he's doing is now he's converting aliens into 3D.
Why?
And it doesn't like it. That movie's perfect. Leave it alone. Aliens is a weird thing now that I think about it. Like,
I brought that up because I was like, do you think Aliens is better than Alien? This is another one where
This
I have
is-
seen Aliens, but not the first one.
Alien and Aliens are both classics,
Mm-hmm.
both masterpieces. I would say. I would say impossible to judge them against each other.
Yeah.
Because they're almost two different genres.
Yeah, they are. They absolutely are two totally
Alien
different
is a
films.
haunted house movie in space.
Yeah.
Aliens is a crazy sci-fi action film.
Yeah. They're two totally different movies that just happen to take place in the same.
Yeah, I almost like
universe.
can compare them. It's like maybe it's like does one have more like Aliens might be more rewatchable. Like I might be in the mood like, oh man, I just want to like put a movie in to have a movie, and I'll watch Aliens because I can kind of like jump into it. Aliens one where it's like, all right, I want to carve out some time to sit and watch and appreciate Alien.
Yeah.
I feel like, kind of like we were talking about before, how things kind of get like, not necessarily ruined when you go back to them. Like, I feel like Alien, the whole thing about was like you see it for the first time and you get the suspense gets you, but like if you watch, like it's still a good movie to rewatch, but like you said, once you have to like actually sit down and get invested in it, but you still kind of know a lot of the stuff that's going to happen. Like as opposed to like Aliens, where it's just like, yeah, you know what's going to happen, but there's still just like gun battles and explosions and like just
You can still like just enjoy it.
yeah.
At any point.
Things go boom.
Yeah. I like Boom.
That's Bill Paxton in it too.
Did you unless
Did
you guys
you look up and make sure it was Bill Paxton?
Yeah,
Oh
it
no,
was
wait,
Bill
what
Paxton.
was the? That was something.
I was
else.
talking about it last night, and I went to say Bill Paxton, and my brain
Paused for like
froze
5
on me.
seconds. You're like, Bill.
Cool. Paxton, yeah.
I forget what that
I
was.
see their faces, and there's just a lever in my head that goes either way between them.
anyway, so did you guys have anything else as far as sequel wise? Because I wanted to switch over if you didn't.
What do you want to switch over to? It depends on what you want to talk about.
Movies that didn't get sequels that you thought should have or would have liked to see sequels of.
See, I think that's tough because sequels can be so dicey. You're like, oh, I want a sequel for this. But then you can be like, yeah, but realistically, it probably would have sucked.
Oh, well, okay. So let's narrow it then. Like, what do you think? Like, a movie that could have been flushed out better had it gotten a sequel, or like you would have liked to see more of the characters.
You know,
in
I would have liked a
sequel.
prequel too.
Prequel.
A prequel, Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
I'd like to see more from the universe, even if it
Yeah,
was
or
like
a sequel.
or sequel. Well, no, the world fucking ends in the
Yeah.
movie.
So probably a prequel would be good for that one.
I prequel would. You know what would also be cool for that is like a 10-episode anthology series that was like every episode was an hour long, and it just showed you like other times where like that succeeded.
Yeah.
And it, like, you know, you could show like, you know, the time in Japan with like little ghost girl and like all the different things people
Or even
listed
if it
on the
was
board.
just, yeah, if it was like, okay, the year 2000, here's like all the different, you know, locations that they said
I want
random.
a merman episode.
Yeah.
That'd be great. I want a unicorn episode. Like,
You and that one actor whose name I can never remember.
Bradley Whitford?
Yes, him.
Yes.
No, that's something that would be cool to see a prequel of because, like you said, there's like they set up a whole bunch of lore, but you never see it.
This is like my cross to bear in life. I love the idea of prequels. It's another thing that's like so rarely well done.
Yeah.
But I just like love the idea of prequels of like seeing people on a track where you know things are going to get fucked up for them in
Yeah.
the next film, and there's nothing you can do to avoid it. And also you're getting like backstory and like a view into them as characters.
Yeah.
And it just like almost never works.
Well, that's like, and this is going to TV, but like Better Call Saul is a prequel for Breaking Bad.
Right.
And it's a character that you see in Breaking Bad, but he wasn't the main character of the show, but it gives you a whole backstory into that world.
Yeah.
And that's really cool.
That show does it well.
Yeah.
I think so.
I think the only problem that you run into doing that as a TV show is then like if you don't have a set end date, then it is just like, okay, now you're going on for like 10 years with this thing that was supposed to be a prequel and everyone's like way older than they were in the original series and
Yeah.
like it no longer really matches up timeline wise, but
You know
I think that can be
bothersome is sequels that try to have prequel moments in them, but like retconning things.
how do you mean?
Scream 3
Oh,
with Roman,
yeah.
where it's like
I
all of a
like
sudden
most of
Sydney has a
Scream.
brother.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm just like, oh, like her mom had this whole like section of her life and never talked about it.
Scream 2, great. Scream 3, eh.
No.
Like that movie just tries to have its like, I don't know, like when Randy shows up in the videotape
Yeah.
and like Heather Mazzarotta is like his sister, and then like Jay and Silent Bob show up.
What?
I don't like anything about that movie except the scene with Carrie Fisher.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like that's not a good movie. And I love the Scream franchise, but like the third one is just like not great.
That is not great.
I was gonna say another, but that like pushed it out of my mind. Shit. What were we talking about before Scream?
I don't know.
I don't know either. It's gone forever.
You know,
Oh, I was gonna say the sequels that try to have prequel moments, like Spider-Man 3, where they're like, oh, like, no, Sandman killed Uncle Ben.
Oh. Ugh.
Yeah, like,
Ugh.
that's a thing now. I think that's, like, exactly what we were talking about before, where it is just like with The Matrix, where they're, like, trying to make things seem like, no, like, we were setting this up all along. And you're like, no, you weren't. Like,
Yeah.
you made this up 5 minutes ago, and you're trying to make
Yeah.
it seem like you knew
Oh,
10 years
we
ago.
need a reason for Spider-Man to hate Sandman more than he's a bank robber.
Right, yeah. Like,
more than his Thomas Hayden Church.
yeah. Or like
You
how...
went sideways. I hate it sideways.
Like how every Batman movie, like before the Chris Nolan trilogy, like recast whoever killed Bruce Wayne's parents. It's like, now it's a Joker. Now it's like a random robber. Now it's Two-Face. Now, like, I don't think it was ever Two-Face,
No.
but yeah, it was. now it's
So
just
bizarre.
an actual bat. Like,
Came and bit Thomas and Martha Wayne and gave him, like,
Right.
hepatitis.
yeah.
That's like one of the baseball furies from Warriors. Yeah. Batman.
All right.
Don't end episode.
Just on that joke, hard cut.
All right, everyone.
No, wait. One more thing. We'll see how the topic goes, and if you guys don't have anything to say, then we'll just, like, leave it out. How do you guys feel about sequels that they space out, like, a long time between the first one and the next one? Like, I feel like Toy Story, especially, like, Toy Story 3 did that. And, like, Incredibles 2 is coming out, what, next year or something?
Yeah, but Incredibles 2 takes place right after the first one.
Right, no, but I just mean, like, in actual world time.
Oh.
Like Too Little Too Late.
Well, yeah, or just, like, I mean, like, when Robin Williams died, they were apparently, like, in talks over Mrs. Doubtfire, too. And it's like, it's been, like, 15 years?
Yeah.
Like, why are we... So, like, is that... I think sometimes, like, with Incredibles, with Toy Story, maybe, it's better because it's like, okay, we were taking the time until we actually, like, had a story we wanted to tell.
That's fine.
Rather than just churning out a sequel just to have a sequel.
Yeah.
But then sometimes it is just like, why? Like, you're just trying to sort of cash in on nostalgia or, like, something that, like, trying to catch lightning in a bottle again.
Yeah, but if it's good, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, Toy Story 3 was good. I didn't mind.
Right.
Like, I really liked
Same.
it. I didn't mind that it was 15 years after Toy Story 2.
Yeah, same. I mean, I enjoyed it. Most importantly, I want to know how you feel about Kindergarten Cop 2
Yeah.
with Dolph Lundgren,
Listen,
your personal
love
hero.
I love Dolph Lundgren, but that movie we don't need.
Yeah.
Like, if like
Isn't it out already? Wasn't it
it's
like
been
a,
out for
Oh,
like
yeah,
a
it's
year.
been out.
It's like a direct-to-video thing.
Yeah, I don't know, it's like there's sequels. Like, do you guys know like the Before trilogy? It is Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight.
No.
Like, and it's about this couple. It's Ethan Hawke and
Oh, you've told me about this before.
Julie Delpy, I think. And that movie thematically, it's about this couple, and it starts with, when they meet, and then it comes back years later to, like, oh, when they're married, and, like, oh, years later, like, when they divorced, or, like, when their, like, marriage is falling apart. And, like, thematically, that's fine, because you come back every, like, 5 to 8 years and, like, visit these characters again.
So it's like When Harry Met Sally spaced across 3 movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's great. Like,
Yeah.
I think if it's designed to be that way from the beginning, that's okay. But, like, there are some things that just, like, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about. They did the movie. They didn't plan on doing a sequel. And then, like, 10 years down the line, they're like, why not?
Yeah, I feel like there's just a lot of weird, like, nostalgia cash grabbing where
Yeah.
they're like, oh, well, like, this movie was popular in the 90s and now those people are old enough to buy movies.
do
So
you guys remember there was a Wall Street 2?
Yeah, with Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
I have
That's-
no memory of any of
What a
this.
fucking mistake.
Poor Michael Douglas.
Poor Charlie Sheen.
Well,
Words no one has ever said.
I have a new segment. It's a bit of a game for Mike and Erin.
I
And
did
it'll
not
be
know
great.
this was happening.
Because neither one of them watches movies.
Excellent.
So,
I watch movies, just not obscure ones like you.
all right. So I'm going to give you the plots for 3 films. 2 of them are real. 1 is fake. The segment is called No Fucking Way. And you're going to decide by saying, Kyle, there's no fucking way.
Is
That
that what
happened.
we landed on for a name?
Yes, it was.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. I feel like I had a better name that only I liked, but I'm willing.
Your
to
name
believe
was
it.
Kyle is a liar.
Wait.
I don't think that's right, but I like it.
Is that the segment name, or is that something
Yeah.
she says on a regular basis?
Well, yeah.
Alright, so, first plot. When teenager Kirsten accidentally cuts her hand during an anti-Christmas pagan ritual, her spilled blood awakens an ancient demonic Christmas elf. The elf is a central figure in a modern-day neo-Nazi plot to finally bring about Hitler's master race.
I was totally with you until the neo-Nazi thing. I was like, yeah, that sounds like a real movie that Kyle would watch, but now I just don't know.
I still feel like it might
just
be.
don't know.
That's the first movie.
Was that movie made by Trump's administration?
That's his, Mike is steering us away from that line of, second film. A retelling of the story of Cain and Abel, but updated to modern Pittsburgh. Christopher Walken and James Caan play brothers whose rival cheesesteak shops embroil the entire city in hilarious, yet heartwarming competition. Soundtrack features original songs by Randy Newman.
Do we have... There's no fucking way, Kyle, but I'll wait until the end to say that for real, but that's my vote so far.
Yeah.
Do we get to ask questions, like follow-up questions about these movies? Yeah. Which one is Cain and which one's Abel? Like, who murders who?
Neither one murders the other one.
Well, that's not a retelling
They
of Cain
burn
and Abel, is it?
they burn each other's businesses down.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, that's actually what happens. They burn each other's cheesesteak factories down, and they build a new one at the end together. That's what's heartwarming.
All right, read the third one.
Okay,
I
the
think
third
he's full
one.
of shit on that one.
Zach is the new kid in town who makes the discovery of a lifetime, a talking, wisecracking magical skateboard named Rip, voiced by Dom DeLuise.
When did that come out? Like, roughly?
That movie is 91 or 92.
Oh, that's very plausible.
See, he's saying these things with such conviction
I
that
know.
it's hard
Let's
to
go
tell.
back to the neo-Nazi elf.
Yeah.
Is that like a third act thing, or is that like all in the setup that it's like?
No. The movie is, do you guys know Grizzly Adams?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grizzly Adams is a mall Santa. He's a retired cop, I believe.
Uh-huh.
And he lives in the mall after the mall Santa is killed by an elf.
Uh-huh.
I'll tell you what. I think that one is fake just because it didn't have any actors' names in it.
Ooh, that's a good point.
I think the other two were
But I mean, he brought them about later.
No, the neo-Nazi thing happens later on in the movie where there's a dinner scene and there's like children at the table. Mm-hmm. And I think the actual line is, your grandfather's a Nazi. And these two little kids are eating dinner, and there's just a guy, like, hard explaining all the exposition at one point.
I thought this one was real, but the more he explains it, the less I think it's real.
What do you want to go with?
Damon, do you have any more questions about this movie?
Yes.
Like,
Is there like any kind of musical number or like rap scene in the skateboard one?
no. There is a lot of, like, hip-hop, like, music played on the soundtrack.
Okay.
And it's a lot of, like, really awkward, like, urban white children.
That sounds legit. What was the name of that one?
That movie's called The Skateboard Kid.
Well,
And
So-
he gets the skateboard. I think it's his father is like in the Air Force. And there's a part in the film where his dad's like, they're fixing a car in a garage. He's like, all right, buddy, gotta go. And he unzips his like car worker outfit, and he has like a military fatigues under that. And then he leaves, and I think the dad dies. And then he gets like a ticket, like one of those like fill in like a reward and get a thing tickets from heaven. And that's how he gets a skateboard, I think, if I'm
Okay.
remembering correctly.
That's
so what are the three names of the films?
Elves, Skateboard Kid, and Brotherly Love.
which one was Brotherly Love?
That's the
cheese
Oh, right, the
Walken,
Cain and Abel,
James
except
Caan.
not.
Yeah.
I want to say that one's not real. That sounds like something like a screenplay that Kyle wrote. Like, and is really mad
just
didn't
think
get
that-
picked up by a studio.
I just think the whole Christopher Walken thing is kind of like what's giving it away, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's like it feels like too like Kylie.
It's
Kylie?
Yeah.
it's where Walken was kind of like settling into that like weird, instead of playing like creepy like off-putting serial killer characters, he was just playing like weird creepy off-putting like nice guys. So like
was
he's
that
kind
the
of
era that happened?
yeah, he's kind of like the Abel. He's like kind of like 98, 99, and he's kind of like the Abel, and like people go to his shop and he's like really friendly. But James Caan is like the fuck you, you're getting what I put on your sandwich. Like people try to order things, they're like, well, can you leave the pepper off? And he's like, no, pepper makes it.
Didn't you say it was like a cheesecake place?
Cheesesteak.
Cheesesteak. That makes more sense.
Cheesesteak.
I
heard-
said cheesecake by accident.
Oh, okay, I heard cheesecake when you said it, and I was
Yeah,
just
it's
like,
in
what
like
sandwiches?
it's like in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And they have like the shops across the street from each other.
Yeah.
and they're doing like all these wacky hijinks to like
Obviously.
sabotage each other.
You can't not have wacky hijinks to
He's
sabotage
so-
your brother's cheesesteak factory.
He's so convincing.
He really
Well, no,
is.
it's because it's true. Like Mike called, like they burn each other's like cheesesteak factories down, shops, and then end up building like a bigger one like in the middle of the town.
Yeah.
And ends where they're like, you and
They call it the cheesesteak factory.
I'm voting that one.
I'm gonna go with that one too.
that's final
We have to
decision?
hedge our bets, Mike. We have to bet two different things. I feel like the other ones seem less plausible to me, but just like from your telling of it, I'm not picking up what you're putting down. I'm not buying what you're selling. The second one, I feel like you're making up.
Skateboard Kid.
No.
No,
No,
the
Brotherly
brotherly
Love.
love.
Yeah.
Except Elves is a really bad title, so like.
Yeah, but if it's just like one of those low budget shitty horror movies that Kyle likes,
Yeah.
it might be real.
All right, so it's the final verdict, guys.
God damn, I don't know.
Let's
Only
go with
one of them is fake.
let's go with
right?
Brotherly Love.
Okay, yeah,
Brotherly
let's go
Love.
Brotherly Love.
There's no fucking way
There's-
Brotherly Love is real.
No fucking way. Christopher Walken and I forgot the other guy.
James Caan.
James Caan
Had made
are in that movie.
You guys are absolutely correct. Brotherly Love is not an existing film.
fucking knew. I knew it.
I know you. I know your tells, Kyle.
What's a little more concerning is that
the
Dom
other two are real?
DeLuise voices
Yeah,
a
those other two
skateboard.
movies are things that happen. I own Elves on VHS.
That's so worrying.
Oh, God.
That's so concerning for everything in the world. All right, thanks for tuning in, guys. It is later than when we started, and we're all gonna leave and go to bed.
Thanks for sticking through this one, guys. If you did.
Yeah. One person who is still listening out of
Thanks.
the 4 we started with.
Night, Nicole.
Bye.
Good night, everybody. Hey everyone, if you enjoy listening to the Sleepy Nerds podcast and want to hear more from us, you can follow us on Facebook at Sleepy Nerds Podcast, on Instagram or Twitter at Sleepy Nerds Pod, and you can also subscribe to us on YouTube, Podbean, and iTunes.